Ever get that total sinking feeling when yet another app or, a new AI tool drops and you just think to yourself, I literally do not have the energy for this? Well, society is super quick to judge that hesitation. There's this massive pressure right now telling us that if we don't keep up with the latest tech trends, we're somehow obsolete or just stubbornly outdated. But is that actually true? Are you really just being a boomer for preferring the old way? Or is your brain actually trying to tell you something incredibly important?
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to challenge that narrative head on. We're going to unpack the actual science behind digital fatigue. And as you'll see, actively embracing the analog and consciously choosing to fall behind on certain trends isn't a sign of weakness at all. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a highly rational, scientifically backed survival strategy. All right, let's dive into this.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, the stigma of falling behind. Second, the overloaded human brain. Third, biology versus technology. Fourth, the obsession with change. And finally, number 5, the power of analog. Let's get right to it. Section 1. The stigma of falling behind. We've got to start with this immense and frankly super toxic pressure to constantly adapt. You've probably heard the buzzword, right? Reskilling. Now, structurally, reskilling is supposed to be this supportive system to help us navigate tech shifts. But in reality, it's totally twisted into a test of your personal motivation. Adlerian psychology, which is all about our deep human need for belonging and significance, points out that this kind of environment breeds a really toxic competitive culture. Basically, if you aren't spending your weekends learning the newest AI prompt engineering instead of, actually resting, you aren't just lacking a skill. You're viewed as lacking drive. Coworkers who don't instantly adapt are suddenly treated like enemies to progress or labeled as deadweight. It forces us into this absolutely exhausting cycle of having to prove our worth through continuous software updates to our own brains. And this brings us to Section 2, the overloaded human brain. Because this relentless pressure to learn completely ignores our fundamental biological limits, it leads us straight into a wall of cognitive burnout. 35,000. That is the staggering number of unconscious decisions your brain is making every single day. Just existing as a human being requires massive computational power. Now imagine taking a brain that's already juggling 35,000 daily calculations and dropping it into an endless ocean of digital notifications, algorithmic feeds, and new interfaces. We are pushing our cognitive capacity way past the breaking point. And that leads to condition researchers are literally calling AI brain fry. See, our working memory is strictly limited. We can really only hold about 7 pieces of information in our heads at once. But in our modern infinite workday, where work emails bleed into personal texts, which then bleed into news alerts, our working memory is just completely saturated. Every single time you switch tasks, say from a spreadsheet to a Slack message, your brain burns cognitive energy. And eventually, it just fries. Look at this. It perfectly illustrates the trap we're in. Survey data shows that among heavy digital users, a massive 90% are obsessed with time performance and efficiency. They want to do everything faster. But, and here's the crazy part, in that exact same demographic, nearly 70% desperately want to escape this very pressure. So we're obsessed with a digital efficiency that we actively resent. We're pushing ourselves to operate exactly like machines. But guys, we're not machines. Which leads us to Section 3. Biology versus technology. Let's look at the ultimate evolutionary clash between our bodies and our tools. Notice the massive disconnect between these two timelines. On one side, biological evolution is incredibly slow. It happens over generations as our bodies physically adapt. But on the other side, technological evolution, it moves at an exponential speed. I mean, just think about how far smartphones have come in the last 15 years alone. Technology simply doesn't care about our physical limits. It just accelerates, leaving our ancient biology struggling in the dust. And this evolutionary mismatch isn't just making us tired, it is causing actual measurable physical degradation. Because we outsource so much of our lives to tech, we're seeing widespread decreased vision from screen time. We're seeing a loss of spontaneous muscle movement because literally everything, even our dinner, is delivered with the tap of a finger. And most concerningly, we're creating an absolute dependence on external systems. If the tech goes down, our basic day-to-day survival is immediately compromised. Perhaps the ultimate, most profound clash of biology and tech is in healthcare. Get this, an overwhelming 74% of people actually oppose being kept alive
purely because medical technology allows it. Really think about what that means. Just because we have the tech to break physical limits doesn't mean it brings us happiness or preserves human dignity. Our biology instinctively knows when enough is enough, even when the technology absolutely refuses to stop.
Moving on to Section 4, the obsession with change. Let's talk about the psychological fallout. How is this constant push for the new actively rewiring our minds?
Well, from a psychiatric perspective, the societal demand to constantly stay updated has actually morphed into a form of change obsession. We aren't adopting new tech because it's genuinely useful anymore. We're adopting it because we are terrified of what happens if we don't. And guess what? It operates on the exact same psychological pathways as obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. Let's walk through how this loop works in your brain. Step 1, you feel the anxiety of missing out. An unread badge or a new trend you haven't researched yet. Step 2, you perform a compulsion, like checking your phone or doom scrolling, just to relieve that anxiety. But here's the catch in Step 3. Giving in to that compulsion doesn't cure the anxiety. It actually reinforces the loop in your brain's hippocampus. You are literally training your brain to require constant checking just to maintain a baseline feeling of normal. It's a trap.
This is exactly why the concept of a digital detox is so much more than just a trendy wellness retreat. A digital detox, meaning turning off notifications and actually walking away from the screen, is functionally identical to exposure response prevention, or ERP therapy. That's the gold standard for treating OCD. By feeling the anxiety of an unread message and intentionally choosing to ignore it, you are actively retraining your brain. You're teaching your nervous system that, hey, the world actually won't end just because you didn't adapt to an update immediately. And that brings us to our final and definitely most empowering section. Section 5, the power of analog. So here is the absolute crucial point to take away from all this. Stepping away from the digital edge isn't failing. Turning to retro or analog experiences is actually a scientifically backed defense mechanism. Research by experts like Dr. John Medina shows that experiencing nostalgia integrates our past with our present. It boosts what psychologists call eudaimonia, which is this deep, sustained sense of happiness and purpose. In a society that experts describe as liquid modernity, where everything is incredibly fluid, fast, and constantly shifting, nostalgia builds a protective wall around your identity and actively guards against oppression. The contrast between these two worlds builds a crystal clear case. On the digital side, we've got information overload, screen dependence, and efficiency panic. But analog environments? They have built-in natural limits. You can only read a physical book so fast. You can only play a vinyl record at one specific speed. Analog engages all our senses, touch, smell, sight, which naturally stabilizes our autonomic nervous system. It forces a relaxing, natural flow of time that our biology actually recognizes and craves. Which brings us to this absolutely beautiful concept. Embracing the analog, or refusing to learn the newest app, is not a sign of being outdated. It's what researchers call autonomous delay. It is a highly rational, self-protective, and deliberate choice to ignore tech trends in order to preserve your own mental health. It's basically the ultimate form of digital resilience. By choosing what not to adopt, you are maintaining cognitive control over your own life. You are flat out refusing to hand your autonomy over to an algorithm. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. We live in an age of absolutely endless convenience where literally everything can be optimized, automated, and sped up. But human beings, we aren't meant to be optimized like software. We need friction, we need texture. So my question to you is, moving forward, which beautiful inconveniences will you actively choose to keep in your life? Thank you so much for joining us, and I highly encourage you to take some time today to enjoy something wonderfully, slowly analog.